Okay, so for today we're going to start building the structure in the back of the bus so that we can put paneling on the back to start with, sheet metal panels. And there's a lot of the rust that you saw in other videos. Climbing my ladder here. A lot of the rust you saw in other videos we got to clean up. I'm going to cap that with angle iron. Probably plug weld it in place to the old metal where the metal is good. We'll start with that as a base, and we'll join up into these channels. But I'm thinking of, I think we want to use a regular hotel style mattress. We really liked the ones from Justice Furniture Company that we stayed, or that are used in Drury hotels. So I think we're going to buy one of those for the bus. But it has a full box spring. So to get that in the bus, I'm going to build a removable panel that's king size width below the window here in the back. That'll give me a mechanism to get that loaded into the bus. And I might even make it big enough to load other bulky items into the bus. We'll see. Haven't decided 100% if I'm going to expand the side door or not. I'm thinking I will, but I'm not sure. So these are the things you got to think about, getting things in and out, being a serious consideration. Maddie has a damn rock in her shoe. Oh no, Maddie has a damn rock in her shoe. You sure it isn't rust?
It might be.
Oh, okay. So what we're doing here, I'm cleaning up this lip with the grinder, with the wire wheel on it, including that sticker there. Alright, so I've been grinding the rust, cutting that. My intention will be to prime this. Once I've got it all cleaned up, I'll prime it before I cap it with another piece of angle iron. And you know, this is probably the toughest part of this whole process, is just cleaning it up so I can get started. I'm standing on a piece of the wheelchair ramp I got from the metal yard, salvaged. This is I got two pieces of this, one longer than this and this one, for like 80 bucks. So this might not be an OSHA approved method. Actually, it's on the bucket forks of the tractor. But it sure is handy. Nice non-slip surface. Probably the jankiest part is the $2 Harbor Freight bar clamps I'm using to keep it from sliding off or flipping on me. But yeah, it's pretty solid. So nice way to work. I think safer because I'm not trying to do this on a ladder. So Madeline helped take this little piece of thin galvanized angle off that was all rusted up, cutting the screws because we couldn't turn them. They were all rusted solid in. So got that cleaned up a bit. Next step will be to clean this deck, and then I'm going to get back at the that lip there. Okay, so I've used the grinder and the wire wheel and cleaned this up here. I cut into here to lower the welded beads from the bottom of that where that metal used to be attached, and then I pounded it in. So at this point we're going to use some Krylon rust protector primer, and got that all ready to go. I'll protect from overspray with that piece of sheet metal, and we're going to put some primer on the first few inches of this lip here, and then I'll cut the angle iron to plug weld it in place. Okay, so got that all primed. I'm gonna let it get a little bit dry while I'm cutting the piece of metal to go over it. I believe that'll be 75 7/8 long. That's the piece of metal right there that I'm going to be cutting. It's 1.5 by 1.5 angle. So that'll be the next step here, is to get that put in place. I'm going to drill holes in it for plug welds, and then I'll use the drill bit to remove the paint enough to get the weld started on this, you know, wherever I have the holes drilled. So I'll put some, probably 4 on each face, you know, 1 on each end, 2 in the middle here, and then that'll be secured pretty well. Okay, so getting the compressor fired up here to throw a couple rivets in, and then I'll plug weld. I decided just to plug weld the top, and the skin riveting through will hold this in place. So Anyway, that's the plan. Alright, so ended up plug welding and riveting this piece of angle on. I ended up measuring wrong by 10 inches and put that little piece in place. But now I'm going to add an angle going the other way, sort of angled up in here. And there'll be a removable section here in a rectangular shape below the back window, which will be up at the spot where it was up in here. We'll put the window back in place here as part of the process of building this metal work to put skin on. So anyhow, I'm going to get started here. Okay, so I cut another piece of angle, drilling some 1/4 holes for some 1/4 steel rivets with a 1/2-inch grip going along the channel. That's going all the way into the engine compartment there, just under probably about 3/8 thickness of steel altogether. I'm going to sandwich it with the rivets because the welder isn't working well on that smaller generator that I have. My intention here is to get the structure built with rivets to hold things in place, and maybe I may have to move the bus or wire 220 from the shop next to the bus. I really don't want to move the bus because it's leveled, and I don't want things to shift before I put the panels on. That could mess up the whole job. So what I'll probably do is either buy a bigger generator, because I probably want a larger one for the bus anyway, or get 220 wired from the shop with that long extension cord that I made for the better welder. That 3,000 watt generator there just isn't putting out enough current without popping the breaker with my 120 volt welder. So if you're going to weld with a generator, make sure it's a little bit bigger, maybe 4,500 or 5,000 watts. Okay, so I've got that angle iron riveted in place. Eventually it'll also be welded. I also have this piece riveted in place. I'm going to do another angle in that gap there on the other edge of that round piece, and then I'll be doing both edges on that as well. Okay, so I've set the back window up on the tractor. I'm going to lift it fairly high, and I'll climb up on it. I'm going to throw some screws in it, a couple screws to hold it in place. Instead of trying to measure and guess, I'm just going to put it in place and frame around it. That'll be the smartest way to do that. I think 4 screws ought to hold it. It'll be interesting to put these screws in. I might enlist my brother's help on this one. Alright, so this platform's turned out to be really handy on the tractor. I was actually able to get that window screwed in with 6 of the screws temporarily to be able to frame around it or build the structure. I did that myself, actually. It was a little challenging, but not too bad. But it's definitely handy to have this aluminum deck on the forks working with a raised roof. So probably not OSHA approved, but gets the job done. So I did pull it in so the bus would support it if it dropped, so I wouldn't fall off. I put a block of wood under it on the edge of the bus. So anyway, time to get the tractor backed up a little bit. Alright, so I got the hat channel caps. I just cut 1.5, 24 inches. Would have rather had it go all the way up, but I don't want to waste material. I can weld in a little bit of 14 gauge, maybe even fold a piece on my own pan brake for that little gap, or just fill it in with some kind of goop or sealant or something. Anyway, I just wasn't willing to waste a whole hat channel cutting 2 pieces instead of 1.5. So anyhow, you can see I've got this gap, or this set just under the edge of the window in place on both sides. Got it here as well, just about 1/16 1/8, just enough that I can put a 1.5 inch angle across there, and then I've got it held in place with vice grips. I'm going to throw some 3/16 rivets into the side, at least one side. Later it'll get welded, but for now, to build the structure, we're using rivets just to hold things in place. So Anyway, I'll keep at it, and I've got to get these two pieces put in, one and then two put in the gap there, or well, actually two more pieces in that gap there, and then I'll be able to put another upright or horizontal in, and I'll brace it at the width of a king-size mattress plus an inch or two, so that we can load a new mattress in and out of the bus through a through a gap. There's the plan. But anyhow, that's where I'm at. Okay, so I got 3 rivets on that flange. I just drilled 3 holes. I kind of squeezed the 2 channels together with those bar clamps. I'm going to put 3 more rivets on this side, although I might put them in. I probably should put them in from the outside, so the head is more flush on that side. So I think that's what I'm going to do there. Alright, so actually there wasn't enough clearance to put them in the other direction, so I just put them in same as those 3. So at this point, I'm going to move to the other side, get the other hat channel cap riveted in place. Okay, so now both sides of the window have the hat channel caps riveted in place. Given the thickness of the gasket, those rivets may actually be able to stay, but I'm probably going to weld the seams anyway, so I may remove them later if the gasket material needs that clearance. So anyhow, next is to fill that gap there and add another piece of angle there, and then we're going to add a cross piece sort of underneath the window across, and then brace it on both sides. And when I build the hatch for loading stuff, it's either going to be hinged or it'll bolt in place into riv nuts that are fastened into the angle. Anyhow, that's kind of where we're at. I'm going to put these pieces in. I've got to go grab some more angle. Okay, so I have that one clamped in place. I'm going to get a square and level it off this deck here. Hopefully it'll be fairly square. Okay, so I've got the pieces on the corners here on both sides. The next step will be the cross brace, going from those over to the through the window to fasten the window to, and then I'll reinforce underneath again at the depth or at the width of a king-size mattress so that we can get the box spring and mattress in easily. Okay, so I'm in the shop. I'm cutting some supports at 27 and 1/8, and they're going to go under the angle iron, under the window. I'm going to rivet it all in place for now, and then I will weld it when I get the right power supply for the welder to actually do good welding. So, all right, so I've got this piece of angle cut to span under the window. It's sized to fill the gap in that angle iron to that angle iron. I've got the supports trimmed at the right level. Those will go probably about 4 or 5 inches out from the edges. And then right here, I'm cutting slots for 1/8 of an inch in there on the one ear of the angle on each side with the angle grinder, so that I can slot the spanning piece across, and it'll get riveted and then later welded. So more to come here. Okay, so I've got slots cut in each side, right there and right there, for this long piece of angle iron to go under the window. It's going to be supported underneath by these pieces, and I'll rivet everything in place and then later weld it. Okay, so I have the angle in the slots. It's going to be riveted to these flanges on the window, or hat channels. Excuse me, dust. And here as well. And then right here we're going to put a rivet through it as well. And again, all this will get welded. Okay, so I'm in the middle of riveting here. I put some rivets at the bottom of the hat channel in that corner. I've done that corner already. Next, that hat channel. And then I'll put the supports in underneath. Okay, so I've got these support braces in place. 1, two. I've got them riveted on the bottom. They are about 78 inches apart, which will be enough room to get a king-size mattress into the bus through the back. So the plan is to build a hatch that won't let water in, but can be removed with either bolts or maybe even on a hinge for loading oversized items into the bus, including a mattress. Let me measure the gap here. I'll see if it'll be useful for other appliances. Okay, so I made a pigtail from the 220 and used the 220 welder, 220 on the generator, used the 220 welder on a low setting, and I was able to get the welding done in the back here. It looks bad because it's flux core, but I'm going to grind it up and prime at this point. I think I've got it tacked in pretty good, and that's enough welding for right this minute. But anyhow, this part's tacked in place. I'll have to make another frame to put skin on for this outside piece, but then the back will be ready to put skin on. Stuff done in the back. Now I'm starting to plug weld these hat channel caps in place. You see I drilled 5/16 holes through the old hat channel. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I've already plug welded the bottom 2. I'm going to do the top 2 on this channel, but I'm going to do this for every channel, and also going to tack a little bit where they overlap. So between that and the bolts, these will be very secure. Plug weld looks like when it's done, and I've tacked on the sides here. I'll hit that a little bit with the grinder to clean it up. It's ugly with flux core, but that'll add some security.